Hey everybody, welcome to Wildcat Dash for a special crossover edition. I'm joined by Nathan Ackerman from Trojan Dash. Nathan, how are you today?
I'm good, man. I'm going to be honest. I say this before every single week of this season. I just hope the game tomorrow gets played. And, we saw this around the conference happening more and more today. Games are dropping like flies yet again. So let's talk about this game as if it's going to happen because that's the only way I really know how to approach it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. My Wildcats haven't played yet, and I hope they kick off tomorrow. Let's get into our first topic. We got two young quarterbacks playing this weekend. They both been showing some good things in their first few seasons. Keaton Slovis and Grant Cannell. Who do you think is going to have the better game this week?
Yeah, so for me, this is definitely an interesting matchup between two young quarterbacks. The thing for me is Grant Gunnell. I mean, he seems like a decent quarterback. Like I was trying to watch some tape on him, and I was like, I could hardly find anything because he just hasn't played all that much, right? And obviously, he didn't get the chance to play last week, so this is the first we're going to see him this season. But from what I did manage to see, I mean, the guy looks decent, right? He's accurate. He's poised in the pocket. He seems like a decent quarterback. But to me, Keaton Slovis is just a tier above, and I would say that about Keaton Slovis compared to pretty much any quarterback in the Pac-12 and most quarterbacks in the country, to be totally honest. So I think I would give the edge to Keaton here. I definitely could see this Arizona offense being better than people expected, especially with kind of the up and down signs we saw from the Trojan defensive unit last week. So if I had to pick one, I'm going to give the edge to Grant Gunnell or to Keaton Slovis here. But I definitely think they're both going to play just fine.
Yeah, I think I would give the edge to Slovis too, just because he has more experience. He has years under his belt in that system, and the reality is Grant Cannell. This is Grant Cannell's first year under full time under center because last year he was splitting time with Khalil Tate. That's why you couldn't find much tape of him. And yeah, I think over time I think Grant Cannell has Slovis's upside, and I think he could be better. Actually, I think Slovis is a tad bit overrated. I mean, let's look at that game last week. Like the word "star" didn't pop off my tongue when I watched that game last week. I know, we're coming off. It's COVID, and they haven't been practicing as much, and first game back. But I wasn't that impressed with him last week.
Those are some strong words, man. I know we've got Emil Jones in the chat right now. Please hit up the chat, Emil, with your takes about the fact that Keaton Slovis is overrated. I'm going to have to disagree with that one. What I saw from Keaton Slovis last week was rust. And, they didn't have a spring camp, they didn't have a fall camp, and I understand that no team really did. But to me, Keaton Slovis for the first like 3.5 quarters, I guess, he never really looked that comfortable. He never really looked like. I mean, the offensive line didn't buy him any time to get comfortable in the first place, right? So a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that he didn't really have any time in the pocket to sort of make the passes that we know he's capable of making. But to me, in the last half of the fourth quarter of that game, Keaton Slovis really stepped up and kind of shook off some of that rust and showed who he truly is. And I think that the Keaton that I think that the Slovis that we saw in those last two drives was way closer to the Slovis to the real, him than the version that we saw, up until that point when he wasn't making the best choices. He was kind of forcing some throws into double triple coverage. I think that was just first game sort of whether it's I don't know whether it's rust or he was a little bit too hyped up or he was trying to make some throws that really no quarterback in the entire country is capable of making. I think Keaton was probably forced way too many of those passes, but I think toward the end he sort of calmed down, and I think like I understand why watching that game from Keaton might not conjure up the word star like right off the top of the head. But I think toward the end of that game, I don't know if star came to mind. I think superstar and elite came to mind. I think star is a little bit of an understatement there. So again, I think that that's the Keaton Slovis that we're more so going to see in this game. I so That's a hot take. It's a very hot take, and I respect you for coming out with that take. To me,
Yeah.
again, Keaton Slovis is just a tier above the rest of the pack.
Yeah, and yeah, I do think he's at the top tier of the Pac-12, and ASU does have a very good defense. So I think that was a tough challenge right off the bat. But and this week Arizona, their defense just flat out isn't very good, and I think he's going to shred that defense. I mean, if he plays like he did late in that game, he's going to
Oh, it's
like
over.
it's
Yeah.
going to be bad for Arizona. But yeah, I mean, when you say superstar, like when I think of superstar, I think of Trevor Lawrence, and I don't think he's anywhere near that.
I mean, we'll see. I could see I could see the two of them along with somebody else, as Heisman finalists this year. Although Trevor Lawrence might not even play enough games. We have a comment in the chat from Josh, one of the Devil Dash co-hosts, that says he probably wasn't feeling himself. COVID side effects from Arizona State. I'm going to leave that comment where it's at. I don't want to make any accusations here, but yeah, definitely not a fun situation going on with the Sun Devils, and we don't know how much that spills over into SC. Early returns show that there are no positive tests there, but of course it takes a couple days to kick in. But back to your point. Yeah, I mean Trevor Lawrence is probably the best quarterback in college football, right? But I think Keaton Slovis, he showed us what he can do last year, and he showed us that the 3-star label was inaccurate, simply wrong. And I think he showed us that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country, right? So I think um, again, I think that the Slovis that we saw in the last couple drives of that game is going to be closer to the real Slovis this year. And the other thing I think is going to have an impact on this is that USC's weapons are, in my mind, superior. I think the wide receiving core is one of the best in the entire country, and the Wildcats have a decent one of their own too. So I'm definitely not going to downplay that. But we're talking Drake London, we're talking Tyler Vaughns, and of course we're talking Amon-Ra St. Brown, and those three could make up one of the 3 best receiving groups in the entire nation. So from that sheer fact alone, I think that USC probably has the edge there. Couple that with the fact that I think Keaton Slovis is, a good a better quarterback, and I think Grant Gunnell again is a decent quarterback. I don't think this is Keaton Slovis versus like the worst quarterback in the entire Pac-12. But again, I think there are tiers here, and I think we need to take into account that Grant Gunnell is probably an above average QB. Keaton Slovis might be the best in the entire conference. And when you give him the weapons at his disposal that he has, I mean, this offense, you said the Wildcat, bunch isn't particularly, keen to preventing big games on the scoreboard, I guess. So I could definitely see SC coming out here putting up 40+ points.
Yeah, and you talked about like stars, Slovis being 3 stars, and so was Grant Gunnell. He was a 3-star guy, and I think by next year, I think by his junior or senior year, I think we're going to be looking at Grant Gunnell the same way we're looking at Slovis. I think he has that potential. I really do. I mean, I think his arm is just as good as anyone in the conference, and I think he's gonna show it this weekend. I mean, if USC comes out and turning the ball over like that, with their defense, and like I mean, then I think I think they could struggle with that. They need to correct, and they also need to correct that if they're really going to compete this season.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me about Grant Gunnell is that, again, we just haven't seen enough. Like, I was trying to see how this guy is because I only saw him play once or twice last year, and beyond stats, I saw like one short highlight reel of like a minute, and there he looked solid. But I'm a big picks guy, right? So the one thing that did stick out to me was he threw 1 pick in 8 games last year, which for me that's pretty solid. He had like a mid 60s completion percentage, something like that. So yeah, the guys, I'm not sleeping on him. Jacob, I'm not sleeping on him at all. I think he's a solid quarterback. His stats were good last year. The highlights that I watched were nice, and people are excited about seeing him play this year. So that'll definitely be a great battle. I think that this could definitely be a high scoring matchup both ways.
Yeah, I agree. Like also like the Wildcats have a few good young receivers. They don't have a lot of experience, but they're just not on the same level. And Arizona just doesn't recruit to the same level. I mean, the receivers at USC every year you look up, they have guys going to the NFL and they're making big plays. And yeah, I mean, we're gonna see. I mean, hopefully these Arizona receivers can develop into that over a few years, but it's going to take time with them.
Yeah, and I mean the Wildcats have some cornerbacks that can slow USC down. I mean, maybe not, to the point of, I don't know, keeping them within 15, 25 points in this game. I think that they still put up a boatload of points, but I mean, if there's any cornerback in the Pac-12 that can slow down Amon-Ra, London, Bonds, Burns is one of those guys that sticks out to me. I mean, he may not be the best one in the entire conference, but he's certainly up there, and he can certainly slow down this group. The problem is if you, I mean, the wide receivers are just so deep that you need like 3 or 4 of those
Yeah,
guys to really
and Arizona just doesn't
make
have that.
impact. Yeah, so I mean, we'll have to see how that plays out, and I think, I mean, we saw it in week 1. Drake London was supposed to be the Trojans' like number 3 option, and he led the team in receptions with 8 yards with 125, and had that unreal game-winning touchdown to end the game. So, or within like a minute 20 left. So, I don't really see this as a 1-2-3 kind of thing. I see this as a 1A, 1B, 1C kind of thing, and frankly they might all be 1As. So. It'll come down to more than just the quarterbacks. It'll come down to the weapons that they have, and they both have some solid ones. But I think USC gets the edge there.
Yeah. On that note, let's go to our second topic. And like Arizona, they missed their first week matchup against Utah because of some COVID positive tests. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if they come in prepared and ready to go. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. So the thing that kind of worries me here is that every team, no matter how good they really are, in the Pac-12 this year has struggled in week 1. And we saw it from SC, right? They were down 27-14 going into, 5 minutes remaining in the entire game. And they were about to lose that game. It took some heroics and a little bit of luck there to steal that one. But coming out of the gate, they just looked, their timing was off. The defense didn't look prepared. The game plan just wasn't quite there. And they were vulnerable in that game, and I think that it was because they didn't have that time to prepare. They didn't have a week before that to sort of work out those kinks before playing one of the best teams in the Pac-12 South. I think Oregon was like tied with Stanford, or they're only like a touchdown ahead up going into just before halftime or something like that. So I mean, they didn't exactly come out playing the best game of their entire lives. I mean, we're just going to have to see. To me, it's couple the fact that it's their first game with the fact that they're playing probably, I would say, the best team in the Pac-12 South, with the fact that nobody really had, spring camp, fall camp. And I think Arizona especially, I might be getting this wrong, but I think they had a few starts and stops in the whole bringing the team back to campus to sort of get into the swing of fall camp as well. So, to me, it's just USC, I think, got unlucky with their schedule in that they were playing what I think is the second best team in the Pac-12 South in their first game. And that's why I was kind of eyeing that one as a game that they really had the potential to lose, even though I think that they are the better, more talented team than the Arizona State. And now that they've had that week to sort of realize what they need to work on, there are tons of adjustments to make. I think they're going to come out a much stronger team, independent of their opponent in week 2. And obviously the Wildcats haven't quite had that chance to, work out some of those kinks and make those adjustments. And also, I mean, maybe the way it plays out is that they had a game against Utah that was just canceled, so now they're extra hyped to come out and play against the Trojans. So we'll see. It could certainly go both ways.
Yeah, I have heard that from the players, like talking and coaches, is that they're motivated even more that game got canceled, because how excited they were to get on the field after all the issues with Corona and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's just like any team that misses a week is just going to come in with an unfair advantage. I mean, like even when we look at like Utah, like we've talked about, like Utah, they missed their first 2 weeks. Like if they play next week, 2 weeks, like they haven't stepped on a football field. So like we don't know what to expect. We really don't, because they haven't. There, you can practice as much as you want, but unless you're hitting and playing with that in game speed, then it's just different. And so we don't know what to expect here. I mean, yeah, Arizona. I mean, I expect the first few quarters to be rough for them. I mean, because I said from the beginning, like a few weeks ago before the season, that the first few games the first few games the Wildcats could struggle just because the most of the team is just different defense. The secondary's like shaken up, and I just think a new quarterback. I mean, just a lot of changes. I mean, it could be a rough start for the Wildcats.
Yeah, and mostly the entire coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball is new this year, and that presented challenges for the Trojans as well because they didn't have time to implement their new defense before the first week, and then they were thrown right into the fire against ASU, and that could be something that the Wildcats, struggle with this year as well. I think that the one thing that might be working in their favor is that Clay Helton said it a lot during practice this week or during media availability this week is that the USC offense doesn't really know what to expect from the Wildcats this game because it's a pretty much entirely new staff. They haven't played this year. They just don't know what they're going. I mean, you have 4 guys coming in from entirely different places, like the NFL, different colleges, different positions all over the country, and you don't know what they're going to bring. So I think if the Wildcats can come in with a plan, and SC has been saying all week that we're not going to try to worry too much about knowing the opposing defense. We're going to focus more on what we do well, which is obviously passing the football and having that balanced attack to allow the wide receivers and Keaton Slovis to thrive. But if the Wildcats come in with a game plan where they're and they know how to adjust to that, I think the game could be. Again, I still don't think that USC is going to lose this game. I think they would have to play a pretty horrendous game in order for that to happen. Yes. And Emil saying in the chat, I hope that they bring their A game. I'm not sure if you're talking about the Trojans or the Wildcats, but honestly, I don't even think the Trojans need to bring their A game to win this game. That might be kind of disrespectful on my part, but I think he also said in the chat that the Wildcats need to play a good game, which I think is true because the Trojans need that competition. They did in the first week was not good enough. It just wasn't. They're not going to go out. That performance is not going to beat Oregon, right? It's not even going to produce a season that brings them anywhere close to the college football playoff, which is what the team's striving for. So they need Arizona to put up a fight, and I think that the defensive coaching staff and the defensive game plan, the fact that this team's just going to be hyped up to play, could present a challenge for them.
Yeah, and I think that the pressure is actually on USC because I think they have a lot of pressure this whole season because like they haven't got to that next level the last few years, and this year they have a good opportunity. And coming to Arizona, like teams like look over teams, and you can't do that in the Pac-12. Like this year, as we talked about, you need it like for a team like USC, they would have to win all their games like to even have a shot at the playoffs. So and they need to have some games that they dominate. I mean, I think this game, I think it could be closer than people think, and I mean, we're gonna see. I mean, like if USC just last week, like when people that are picking like teams to go to the college football playoff, like if they come out with that performance again and a few more times, like that, like no matter if they win or lose, like that just isn't a college football playoff type of team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is something that USC needs to remind itself week in out this year, and that is they're not just going to be, making their case for the playoff against Oregon, against Utah, against Arizona State, right? They're going to be making their case in every single game. And if they come out slow against teams like Colorado, teams like Arizona, teams like UCLA, teams like Washington State, and they put up a performance like they did last week, and maybe they only win by, even if it's just 7 to 10 points, the AP voters are not going to look at that at the end of the season and be, a bunch of undefeated teams to a few one-loss teams and say, this is a team that really stands out. So in each and every single one of these games, USC has to make their case. And again, maybe the unpredictability of the Wildcats coaching staff and the new defensive game plan, whatever, maybe it presents challenges for them. Maybe they only win this thing by 7, 10 points, and maybe that really slows them down at the end of the season.
Yeah, on that note, let's start to give our picks for this game, and not just who's going to win or lose, because that might be easier said than done, but the spread I just saw is up to USC minus 14.5, and to me that's just a little big, I mean, when it's over 2 touchdowns, it's just hard to pick that. I mean, I think I'm going to take Arizona plus 14.5. I'm actually pretty confident about it.
Yeah, I could see it, right, for the reasons that I said before. I really think USC covers the spread, and I think, yeah, 14.5 points is a lot of points, and winning by 2 or 3 touchdowns is hard. But I think that the gap between these two teams is just big enough to the point USC is going to get that done. I mean, we've seen games where the Pac-12 things can be close against teams where it shouldn't necessarily be close against, but we've also seen you know teams go out there and put up 35-7 or 42-10 performances, and I think that this game could turn into one of those. I have to admit, when we were planning out this crossover edition of Wildcat Dash, I was a little bit disrespectful, and I said maybe we shouldn't talk about who wins. Maybe we should talk about who covers the spread because in my mind, I don't really see a chance why USC loses this game. Excuse me. So I'm going to give you the platform right here. Do you think Arizona is going to win this game?
I think they have a better shot than people think. I would not be surprised if they win this football game. I mean, like I said, like nobody knows what you haven't seen them play football this year. So like if they come out, I mean, like I think 2 straight weeks, like if they get out to a big lead, I think it's going to be hard for USC to come back. Like I mean, you can't come back by that many points every week. I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen. So, I mean, I think if they come out early and scoring a lot of points, I mean, I expect this game to be high scoring. I think it's going to be over a 60-point total game. I mean, I think both teams are going to put up at least 30 points. I think like USC's defense just didn't look that great last week. I mean, I think they'll improve as the season goes on, but like I do think if Arizona establishes the run game early, like plays the clock right, and just keeps it on their side. I mean, and doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I mean, I think they have a good shot to win. Actually,
Emil Jones back up in the chat saying USC by 3 touchdowns. I have to agree with you there. And then Jacob saying potential trap game. And I guess every game we're severely favored is going to be a potential trap game because if you lose, it could ruin the entire season. But I want to talk about what you said about coming back every single week. And I think, yeah, you definitely can make that sort of that same type of comeback week in, week out. But I think what happened in the Arizona State game was that at some point USC, at least offensively, flipped a switch and said, your defense is not as good as my offense. And therefore, if we get the ball, we're going to score. So I think if Arizona goes up early, I still do, I mean it's going to have to be a pretty big lead for me to say that there's no chance that SC comes back and wins this game, because for me they could be down even 21 points in the third quarter. I really do not think it'll get to that point in the first place, but if somehow that were to happen, I still don't think this game's out of reach for SC. I think that if they can make the adjustments, whatever's ailing them in the first 2.5 quarters of that game, if they could just turn that around and sort of take that same philosophy and say my offense is better than your defense, to me there's no reasonable deficit that USC can't come back from.
yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but I also like. I mean, yeah, last week it was the first week, so we don't really know what to expect. This week's going to be a true test for I think all Pac-12 teams that are playing, like to see what they really got, because 1 week's under their belt for a few of the teams. So you got to come out and yeah, if USC's defense is playing at a high level, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think they could win by a few touchdowns just because like Arizona's like I think USC I think in the end of the day like USC is just going to outscore them and not like Arizona's just not going to be able to keep up. And so yeah, I think USC could easily score 40 points, I mean, plus even with that against
Yeah,
that shaky defense.
yeah. I don't know if I see USC's defense putting up necessarily a dominant performance. I mean, we saw last week didn't look all that great, right? The Todd Orlando game plan, I don't honestly, I don't even know what it was. It just didn't look that good. And yeah, the only reason they were able to close out that game, obviously they got to stop late, but if they hadn't gotten that onside kick, then they would have lost that game, and it would have been, a lot on the defense. I mean, of course, they turned the ball over 4 times, but I don't know if you should really be allowing 28 points in that game. And it could have been more if they had extended the lead toward the end there. But again, I think that the Wildcats, I think they have the quarterback and they have enough weapons at wideout to make this not a close game. I still don't think it's going to be particularly close, but to put up, maybe, I don't know, 20 points, 17, 20 points against this SC defense. And I don't see them putting up pretty. As you said, I guess I wouldn't be shocked because the USC defense in the last few years hasn't particularly been, good. And I don't know if I really, I mean, I'm not going to go all in on them, allowing 7 to 10 points in this game just because you can never really expect that. But I think USC could allow 17 to 21 points this game and honestly still win by like 30 because I think this offense is just so high-powered. And, I don't know if there's any way USC scores less than 35 points.
I would just be shocked if they win by like more than like 24 points. If they win by more than 20 to me, I would just be shocked. I just have like such high hopes for this offense, and I think this offense could be better than ASU's offense. I mean, I think we have a better quarterback in Arizona. I mean, I think our receivers, I think they're very good, and they're going to prove a lot of people wrong this year. And the run game, we have multiple different running backs that can take J.J. Taylor's spot this year. And I think it's a tough game, but I think it should be an exciting one.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a reasonable chance that Grant Gunnell has a better season passing than Jaden Daniels, right? I think what we saw in the USC Arizona game, he only threw the ball like 20 times or something like that, and his numbers weren't particularly great. I mean, again, it could have been a similar kind of thing that happened with Keaton Slovis, where you come out of the gate when it's your first game of the season, especially against a good opponent, even if USC's defense isn't, world class, I guess. But it can just present that sort of thing where, I don't know, your timing's a little bit off, your decision making's a little bit off. You try to force too many passes that, it's a double, triple coverage that not only you can't make, but no, human quarterback can really make. I mean, Keaton Slovis was trying to force some balls that, I don't think Aaron Rodgers could, right? So that from Grant Gunnell, I think we could kind of see that. I know he's a competitive guy. I was reading up that when he found out that Arizona was picked by a lot of people to finish last in the entire Pac-12, he said that's disrespectful. I think we're going to go out and shock some people this year. So I admire that competitive mindset. I wonder if being a young quarterback, if there's a chance that sort of backfires on him and he tries to do a little bit too much, at least early on this game, and sort of starts to dig a hole that is too big for the Wildcats to come out of. And honestly, I don't think that hole necessarily has to be that big. I think they have to carry a pretty sizable lead into halftime in order to really threaten to upset the Trojans in this game. But again, I think it's going to be a good quarterback battle. I think this offense is probably going to be solid. I think USC is going to make enough defensive adjustments to get the job done. Again, I don't think they're going to allow 0, 3, 7, 10 points in this game. But I think given how well this USC offense projects to match up against the Wildcats defense, despite the fact that they don't really know what to prepare for, what to expect, I don't think the defense really has to be that dominant in order for coaches to win.
Yeah, on that note, unfortunately, we're going to be out of time for this week. And guys, make sure to check out our new partnership with Sports Pack 12 on their website, sportspack12.com, and at SportsPack12 on Twitter. And you can check all our content out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Dashsports TV, and Dashsports.tv is our website where you can see all of our content. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and hopefully we have a good game tomorrow.
Hopefully we have a game tomorrow in the first place.
Yeah.